And so now there's been more of a groundswell of voices that are being raised. And so that's great, but this is something that needs to be maintained, sustained over time. And so what we're doing at Rising Voices is that we are a Pan-Asian organization. We are working with different communities and groups to actually create and build sort of unity behind the idea of Asian American power. So collective sort of power is what we believe in, the ability of us as a group, but not a monolithic group, to actually move and create change. And so now we are the fastest growing population. We have whole cities that are now pretty Asian. I mean, if you go to Canton right now, it has been transformed, Canton, Northville, Farmington Hills. And so we are no longer in white suburbia. And each of those communities have incredible stories and heritage. We have programs where we do storytelling sessions, we collect oral history. We're also doing an extensive photography project to build community and create a sense of unity.
Commissioner Xiong and State Representative Puri, we want to talk to you about your stories, about how you got to where you are and why you are where you are as elected officials.
I decided to run for office in January of 2020 last year, right before the pandemic hit. I'm a small business owner and a designer. I had just opened up my first storefront the previous year, where I custom design all the clothing inspired by my Hmong heritage. My family and I came to the US in 1987. I was born in a refugee camp, and we came here with nothing but the clothes on our backs. I moved to Metro Detroit in 2003, right after high school, and I was accepted to the College for Creative Studies. I graduated with my BFA in graphic design, and since then I've worked in advertising and marketing. I wanted to run for office because I've lived here for over 18 years, and I didn't see anyone in my community that reflected me, making the decisions that affect our community. I had to run a very tough campaign during a pandemic, knowing that at any time while going door knocking, I could be targeted for being Asian. But I had to push forward because, if I didn't run for office, I'm not sure if anyone in my community would have.
My story is not much different than what Mai shared. As Jasmine mentioned, Canton has transformed over the past few decades, and now the Asian population of Canton was upward of 30%. But in that, there were no Asian elected individuals. And so it was a need for representation. But my seminal moment was, I think, more out of tragedy, unfortunately. I am a proud Asian American. My parents immigrated from northern India in the late 60s, early 70s. And so those lovebirds, could have settled anywhere between San Diego and New York City, and they picked a small town in Wisconsin, of all places. And so I was born there a number of years later. When immigrated in that time period, there wasn't a lot of people that looked like them. And so they did a good job meeting people. And as the community grew, being of the Sikh faith, they actually were instrumental in setting up that community and one of the first Sikh gurdwaras in Wisconsin. And so although I was not an immigrant myself, those ideals were obviously instilled at me, but that led me to get started working with President Obama. And it was the 2012 presidential campaign when, unfortunately, if you recall, there was a shooting where a white supremacist came into a Sikh Gurdwara in Oak Creek, Wisconsin, and opened fire in the name of hate and Islamophobia and killed 6 innocent souls. And so, unfortunately, people lost that day. Many of them were close family friends who had immigrated at the same time as my parents, and it just was a tremendous loss for our community, for my family. And, I had the privilege of having a couple intimate conversations with the president in which he looked me in the eye and he told me that the change you want to see starts with you. And just kind of seeing my family's story in that Sikh temple shooting kind of evaporate from the world news in a matter of minutes, because I think there was another shooting the next day. Unfortunately, just, made me realize that there wasn't the representation we needed, and I wanted to expand my platform to try to tackle some of those inequities. And so, just got involved here locally, helped a number of campaigns, kind of learned how things work, and then ultimately had the opportunity to run for state representative here in Canton.
Well, how many Sikhs are there up there at the State House?
I am actually the first elected Sikh American in Michigan's legislative history. I don't say that with any pride, though. I just think I'm the first person of color actually to hold this seat. And this is one of the most diverse areas in Michigan, one of the most rapidly diversifying districts in the entire state. And so for me to be saying this in 2021 just speaks to volume, just to how far we still have to go.
Unlike the House, we are very small. We're 13 Board of Commissioners. And so everyone has gotten a chance to know me. And being Asian American can be very isolating because oftentimes you're the only one. In anything, you have to learn how to build relationships with people. And so when they understand you and you give them a chance to learn about you, they will respect you and listen to your voice.
We have a right and entitlement to our participation. Our generation are beginning to transform into a group that is becoming more and more entrenched into the American identity rather than immigrant and new immigrants. So we're now reaching that point, which I think is very, very good.